All right. Where are you, Colin?
What's a Colin?
It's a weird Swede.
Oh, I thought Colin was a euphemism for something.
I mean, Colin probably is a euphemism for something.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
All right. How much time did we give Colin?
Well, it's only 10. Where would he be?
Sleeping.
Oh, yeah. Well, what's the time difference now? I don't even know.
I think he got it settled after last time, but I don't know. We'll see.
Hmm. This is what, 108?
Yes, sir.
What do you want to start with? You want to? Are we just gonna start straight with you want to talk about Nylander at all?
No, I don't really care about Nylander.
Me either. I think it's bullshit.
Who fucking cares? It'll either happen or it won't.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him sit out the season, though. That screws him and Toronto.
Dangerously close. That's very much another reason. All the other stuff aside, cap, trade and all that other stuff. That's not the attitude at all that Wilson likes. Not that you don't try to improve your team if you get the chance, but Wilson's a pretty big character guy.
Right.
That's all we hear about. Character. Regardless of whether or not it's true, character. Hey Ben.
Yes.
Character. Just saying that. Character.
Feels like I've got this episode's title now.
Character.
Character.
I like it. That's a good one. Are you ready to be a Portlander or an Oregoner?
I am ready to be an Oregoner. Yes.
Especially after the smog and all that crap going on right here, huh?
Good Lord. Well, I mean, fire season doesn't spare Oregon. It gets smoky during the summer, but
no, it only hits us. We're special.
I am straight done with California in every way. So
look at that. Look at that. But not the Sharks.
Well, no, I'll always be a Sharks fan. I subscribed to NHL TV just for that. So
I know you keep making a big deal out of it.
I'm just worried.
Oh, just go watch NHL streams. You'll be fine.
I don't really want to click random links.
Oh, it's fine. They tell you what links have ads in our sketch.
How the fuck do they know?
Because it's a whole group of like nice people who are also trying to figure it out.
Don't lie to me.
Just don't be the first to click. Oh, Ben, I always lie to you. Alex isn't even my real name.
I knew it.
Yeah.
It's Humphrey.
It's Jeffrey. Humphrey. Wow. Like the whale. All right.
I know of the Charlo naming conventions. It's Engelbert.
Well, first of all,
Humphrey.
Charlo's Ellis Island. Let's get that straight. If you look up the last name, I'm like the one white guy. The rest of them are African American dudes, which is pretty funny. I don't know where that comes from. Or I do on my side. I don't know where it comes from on the other side at all. It doesn't really sound like you can link that in any way, shape, or form to the African language. But hey, and I don't think it's one that you grab like Smith. It's like some guy must have been like, oh yeah, these people came through. What you call them, Charlos? What you call all of you, Charlos? Like that's the only logical way, right? Because you would never come up with that name.
Not short for Charlovsky.
So actually,
Charlovich.
Charlovsky, I think. I'm royalty somewhere.
Aren't we all royalty somewhere?
Not in any way that has benefited me or given me money, but one day, maybe. Probably not, though. But you never know. But I do know not. Definitely not.
Well, which is it? Stop.
It's a little bit of everything.
Going back and forth on it.
It's a little bit of everything. Call in. Are you alive?
I think he has slept through.
No way. You think though? Did he say he was even going to be on the podcast?
I mean, he didn't say he wasn't.
I mean,
he's usually pretty good about like, oh, I can't do this week. So
Yeah, he is pretty good with that.
let's see, because I'm pretty sure when I said Sunday or sorry, Friday night, he said yes before you asked. So I'm just going back through that. If you guys didn't have a billion fucking posts about Red Dead Battlefield
Hey man,
Revolution.
hey man, we work in the games industry. What do you want from us? What do you
Damn it.
want?
I don't work in the game industry.
I had a nice lunch with Yop.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love Yop.
Yeah, Yop was great.
You know, he and I were really close, and then we live close to each other, and we keep saying we're gonna meet up, and we never meet up, and we finally met up, and it was great. That's
He's a good dude.
the whole story behind that. There's really not much more to it. Yeah, very good dude.
God damn it, Colin.
Colin.
Colin for Colin.
Paging Dr. Colin. Dr. Colin.
All right. Yeah, I think he must have just slept through. So I guess it's just you and I.
All right. Let me pull one thing
Bastard.
real fast, and then we will do this shebang. What number is it?
108.
108. All right. Yeah. Hold on one second. Where is? Wait. Let me see something real quick. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't see if he ever actually recognized that we were going tonight. So I think he's
in
La La Land.
Incommunicado. All right, let me do one thing and then I'm ready. Sorry.
Sounds good.
Does it? Does
No,
it?
it sounds terrible. I'm gonna drink my beer and
How
dream about my 9-hour drive tomorrow.
Sounds delicious. The beer, not the drive. I would not recommend tasting the drive. That would taste like crap.
Yum.
Okay, let's see here. Where is this thing I'm looking for?
So yeah, in terms of what I want to talk about, I mean, I think we're gonna end up bitching and moaning about the defense, the goalie, and DeBoer, basically.
Yeah, I'm a little less on the DeBoer bitch this week, but I'll let you go on it.
No, I mean, I don't. It would just be repeating myself at this point. He just seems incapable of figuring out how to get this team to not suck.
Yeah, I mean,
defensively specifically, and he's incapable of, recognizing that Jones probably needs to sit for a few games and either get healthy or get his head on straight.
Yeah.
And those deep pairings, man, those deep pairings.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that I want to address is sort of all the crap that we're hearing from the announcers, which is and some fans.
Oh, you mean the rah sis boom ba, everything's fine here?
Well, no. It's clear the misconception about our take on Jones, because I actually do not hate Jones. It's just, you got to be realistic about his situation, and then also, like, to make sure that people understand, because we actually have a lot of new people that listen to the podcast. I happen to know this.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure they understand, like, it's not always the goalie's fault, but you can't absolve the goalie of everything. Like, that defeats the purpose of, per my rant earlier today. It's like, if you believe that every time that a goal goes in, it's the defense's fault, then you might as well not have a goalie, because like the goalie's job is to be that last person there.
And really, my perspective on that is, look, watch every time the Sharks get a breakaway on a goalie.
Yeah.
And think about how few times they take a shot that the goalie just barely doesn't react to, and that goal's in, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that the Sharks are particularly terrible shooters. It's some combination of, okay, maybe occasionally it is a great shot, but it's also that Jones just isn't doing what he's supposed to do. He's not seeing the puck. There's something wrong there.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Which is why we talk about it during the podcast instead of now.
Oh, God damn it.
So we are, what it calls
108.
Oh, 108. Okay. Hold on. What is going on here? All right. 108. Taking a sip of my beer. All right. Hello and welcome to Circling the Cup, San Jose Sharks podcast, episode number 108. This week, I'm here, obviously. It's Alex, and with me is Ben. What's up, Ben?
Hello.
And not with us this week, or maybe a surprised guest later in the podcast, depending on whether or not he set his alarm clock correctly. Colin, who I don't know why I said that so enthusiastically. He's not here. But anyway, we got a lot to talk about. There were a whole bunch of games this week. And there are actually a lot of like interesting topics around the NHL we could go into, but we're not going to go into those because, well, we're a Sharks podcast, not just an NHL podcast.
What?
I know, crazy. I want to open things up, Ben. I want to talk about this Jones situation. And I know that this has been popping up a lot. I'm sure if you're on Twitter doing the tweets, you're already well aware of kind of the, it's not really a controversy, I guess I would say, but the back and forth between the sub fan bases of the Sharks and as well with the announcers, this idea that Jones has not been great this year. We've talked about it a bit on the podcast, but what I really want to focus on, Ben, if you'll entertain me, is sort of the idea of what a goalie's role is and what a goalie is and isn't to a degree responsible. Because what I noticed was it was either the Nashville game or the Toronto game this week. All of the announcers kind of rushed to the defense of Jones. I'm sure because they were getting tweeted at about it. And they were kind of pointing out, that no one in the locker room blames Jones and all this stuff. And listen,
well, they take their cues from the player leadership, and the player leadership has also done this publicly, come to the defense of Jones, right?
And look, like I understand why you would come to the defense of Jones if you were in the locker room. That makes sense. But to a degree, there's some propaganda going on there, and that's fine. That's what their job is. Here's the thing. Jones has not been stellar this year. Now, whether that's because he's just having an off year, which is possible, whether it's because, there's an undisclosed injury, also, I guess, possible. Although I tell you what, Ben, the further and further we go into the season, the less and less I think that that's really what's going on.
Mainly because if he was hurt, DeBoer would have pulled a trigger by now, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But what the announcers were talking about that kind of irked me was this idea of, well, bad bounce, well, defensive lapse, well, all these other things. And here's the reality of a situation. Like, if you've never played goalie before in a hockey game, it's not the easiest position in the world, to tell you that. I played it when I was younger. Here's the thing. Not every goal that goes in is the goaltender's fault. Okay. Sometimes the defense puts a goalie in a bad position. That happens, and there's very little that a goaltender can do. Sometimes the other team blocks the goaltender's line of sight or clogs the zone. In fact, that's actually what you want to do, right? And in that case, someone rips a shot and the goalie doesn't have a clear line of sight. It's pretty tough to make a save. Where I take issue is sort of this idea of blaming everything else, mainly because the goaltender is the last line of defense between, the goalpost, basically. It's the goalie's job to save pucks. They can't save every puck. Again, if you have this mindset of, well, every time the defense screws up, it's the defense's fault and the goalie's not responsible, you might as well not have a goaltender in net. You might as well just play six players on the ice. Because here's the thing, like, that's why the goaltender's there. The goaltender is there to be the last line of defense. So regardless of whether or not the defense is screwing up, if the goaltender has a clear line of sight, it's the goaltender's job to stop it. Now, again, who knows what's going on? It could be an off season. Maybe this is the real Jones. You don't really know. I don't know, Ben. Like, when I hear that, I kind of look at that and I go, especially with the way that the Sharks D has played this season, and especially with DeBoer's sometimes bizarro pairings and bizarro situations. Like, yeah, the defense has not been spectacular. And yes, they have made a bunch of bonehead plays. They did so this week, quite a few. But in a lot of the situations, particularly in like the Toronto game, for example, Jones is in position. He can clearly see the puck and the player shooting.
Well, you would imagine he could.
Well, yeah, not in his
because
head.
he doesn't respond like he can see the puck.
Right, exactly. And in those situations, it's like, hey, like, or on breakaways and stuff. That's why he's there. So,
Yep.
Again, I don't want to make it sound like, I dislike Jones or anything. I actually like Jones quite a bit, and I know your league average and all that stuff. I got it. But my point is really more along the lines of, like, as much as I like Jones, like,
yeah.
you have to admit that he is a part of the problem right now.
Yeah, look, I would take league average Martin Jones right now because he's not been league average Martin Jones this year, period.
Right.
I mean, he's got an AHL quality save percentage right now, and it's not all on the Sharks' defense in front of him. Look, the goals he's giving up. We've always said this thing about Jones, which is, every other game he's going to give up that one he wants back, right? He's going to give up that third goal that just is. It looks like he didn't see the puck, or he just didn't respond to it, or what have you, and that's just who Jones has been over the last few years, the playoffs accepted, right?
Right.
This year he's giving up more than that one oopsie a game, and they're coming on shots that you just expect a goalie to challenge the puck, at least see the puck, at least, like maybe even get part of their glove on it at least, and he's not. Particularly in the Toronto game, there were 3 one-on-ones, and 2 of them get past him. And if a goalie is gonna give up 2 out of every 3 breakaways that a team gives up, you're going to lose. You're going to lose a lot of games. And that's just what Jones has looked like this year. As a counter to, if you're going to try to blame this all on defensive breakdowns, as a counter, watch a Sharks game and count the 2 or 3 breakaways that the Sharks get in a game, and just watch their goalie play the shots to see what it's supposed to look like. Right. I understand the team coming to the defense of a guy who's struggling like Martin Jones clearly is.
Yeah.
And I can understand some of the fan base not wanting to face the reality that right now Martin Jones probably would be bad for the Barracuda. But there's lots of blame to go around. Jones has, by every metric, if you want to use save percentage, which is, has its issues because, again, you can hang a goalie out to dry on some goals, and the Sharks have. But you can also look at, some of the deeper metrics that the guys have developed around the league, like expected goals, and where those shots are coming from matters a little bit. But Jones is giving up more than he should, based on where pucks are coming from. Right. Now, at the same time, the defense has been bad, so it can be hard to separate the real culprit in this stuff. The Sharks defense does take some responsibility for this, and honestly, at this point, since this has been a trend through 20 games at this point, the onus really falls on the coaching staff, because they can't seem to get these guys to play the way they want them to, and it's consistent. DeBoer spent some time late in this week, after the Toronto loss, talking about how he's trying to install a new system, and that's what's causing these problems here. And I don't see what they're doing differently. I mean, granted that, one of the things that has been a hallmark of these Sharks teams under DeBoer has been a lot of shot blocking and a lot of collapsing to the net. And I guess you could say we don't see as much of that.
Right.
As we should, because the Sharks are not suppressing shots, particularly in the last 10 games, as they typically do. But I'm not really sure what he's going for. What is the change he's hoping for? And my issue here is kind of twofold. First, when the coaching staff is letting a guy off the hook publicly who has not been particularly good, we don't know what's being said in the room, obviously, or what's being said one-on-one, but I've always had an issue with that. I'm not saying like a coach has to slag guys who are struggling, because that can be super counterproductive, but you can't also be Baghdad Bob, about what's going on and have any credibility with the fan base. That's issue one. Second, I mean, it's DeBoer's job to put these guys all in a place to be successful. And right now, it doesn't look like he's doing that. The defensive pairs are messed up. The play decisions are messed up. Jones is playing when probably Dell should get another game or two, again, because we don't know what's going on with Jones, to at least give him some time off.
Yeah.
And so I guess if we come across as if we're saying Jones is bad, I mean, he is bad this year. He is objectively bad this year.
Yeah, this is not a good season for him.
It's not a slur upon his house, and it's not us saying that he's always been bad, but he has essentially been kind of league average goalie, even with the Sharks, the playoffs notwithstanding. And who knows if Dell can actually stand up to starter minutes, but at a certain point, if your goalie is giving you sub 900, performance, something has to change. You have to try something. So that for me is going to be the real thing to watch, right? Does DeBoer eventually accede that there's something that has to be done here, and we see a little bit more of Dell? I'm gonna guess no,
right?
Because
I would align with you on that. I mean, well, and that's the thing too, is that again, has the defense been great? No, it really hasn't. And again, I believe that a large portion of that, and I'm sure you would agree with me, has been because they're not really the pairing, the timing of the pairing is bizarre, right? Like when you have Vlasic on the power play, or when you got
well, so do you want? Here's the thing that really worries me, right? So the team has struggled all year, but from a sort of again, when you look at the underlying metrics and where how many dangerous shots the opposing team is getting versus how many dangerous shots the Sharks are getting, they looked a little bit better early on when Vlasic and Karlsson were paired together, as you might expect,
right?
And when Braun was down on the third pairing, and they've been way, way, way worse since DeBoer decided to switch all that up because Karlsson wasn't, accumulating points or whatever the reasoning there was. And honestly, Braun's play over the last week and his play before that even has got me deeply worried that guy might be donezo.
Yeah.
Just straight donezo.
Yeah, I think you've raised that point a couple of times, man.
Yeah. Well, I worry about it because, his misplay of a puck was critical to sort of a tie. I think the tying goal in the game against Nashville. Now the Sharks eventually came back and put that one away, or maybe it was the go-ahead goal actually. And he had 3 of those almost exact same plays happen to him in the Toronto game, where really the Sharks were lucky they didn't end up letting yet another one-on-one against Jones develop, right? And the Sharks don't seem to see it, right? They're either intentionally matching Vlasic and Braun against the other team's top line. We saw this a lot in Nashville, where the Johansson line and Josi pairing just got major minutes against Vlasic and Braun, which, the Sharks had home ice, which means they got to do last change. So it could be DeBoer was putting that out there, but I'm assured by other watchers that it's a mixture, that it seems that Laviolette also was happy to get that matchup, and he should be, because Braun is bad. I mean, he's real bad, and he's dragging Vlasic down with him.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Like, something that is clear from the outside, clear as a detriment to the team from the outside, both when you look at underlying metrics and even the bad metrics like plus minus. Just simply, the team doesn't acknowledge it. It's like they either don't see it or they just don't care, or they don't understand how bad it is. Now, I don't know how you fix it, because if Braun is donezo, it doesn't really help the team too much if he's the 6th D, because he's still got to hold down some minutes with Dylan. But it's better, it's better than thinking that he's your shutdown guy and he's actually sort of giving the other team joners. So,
right, I agree with you. I think when you look at our complaints about this team, they're out of love. I mean, it's frustrating because, again, on paper, this team should be playing better than they are, and maybe they right that ship. We did predict that they would kind of be in a similar position, and we also predicted that, hopefully by December they would have it all sorted out.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's one of those things where there's plenty of blame to go around. Again, the team right now, as of this podcast, they're first in the division, so they're not doing terrible.
I know, right? Well, that's a really bad division.
Yes, of course. Then
and injury plagued too.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and that's when I get to the standings, I talk about how close they still are in the Pacific. Yep. That's the thing, like especially in this NHL right now, which is this year has been much higher scoring. Those little things need to be worked out. Like the defense needs to be communicating. Yep. The pairings need to be intelligent. They need to be used situationally correctly. Our goaltender has to play in net and stop shots. Like if any one of those things falls through, that's the season for the Sharks. Like in the end, like will we make the playoffs? Sure. I don't like that. Doesn't feel like it's in jeopardy to me at all.
No, I don't think so.
Our division is, but the fact of the matter is we don't really care whether or not we make the playoffs as Sharks fans at this point, right? Like we want, a Stanley Cup. And in order to get that, those things have to be working. Now, fortunately for us, Ben, you brought this up earlier. So far, Jones has had kind of a tendency to turn it on in the playoffs. So he's even enough for that. Okay. But it is pretty crazy because you watch these Sharks games this season and there's so many goals coming from both sides. Like, we talked about this last podcast where, the last Sharks 10 or 11 at that point, had the team that had won had scored 4 pretty much every single time.
Yep.
And when you look at it, the Sharks are scoring, which is great. Thank you, Timo. We really appreciate it. Sorensen too, who's definitely gonna get a nod this week.
Timo Jr.
But that's the thing is that like the other side of the ice, they got to hold up their end of the bargain, and it's really on DeBoer to figure this out. And if he can't figure it out, Ben,
hey, Coach Q's out there. Oh,
there you go. Yeah,
it's not gonna happen.
Wasn't having his own defensive struggles, but that was also a little bit more roster, I think, than full on just lineup idiocy.
I mean, it just feels to me like I worried about this from the moment that Karlsson was acquired. Erik Karlsson is that DeBoer has always run a very specific system with very specific roles, and he's gonna find the player to fill that role because he doesn't seem to know how to adjust the system to fit the player.
Yeah,
historically, right?
Right.
Now he's got no choice, right? He's been handed a roster that doesn't really fit his philosophy, which I think is partly why he went back to the Vlasic Braun pairing, is because that shut down defensive focused pairing just fits his philosophy, even though it doesn't fit the modern NHL and what you should be really doing in the modern NHL. And my worry with the Sharks and why I'm so, I guess, salty about this whole situation is that I just don't think DeBoer is the right guy to coach this team. And I don't think the Sharks can have success with him coaching this team unless something major changes this year. And so it's almost like, to me, what I see in this year is just a waste of this season with Karlsson that should have been so much more. Now, obviously, we're only 20 games in. We predicted I predicted that the Sharks would go 10-10-1 while DeBoer tried to figure this stuff out. I thought we'd see him actually start to figure stuff out, and that's what I find frustrating because he doesn't seem to get it.
Yeah. Well, hey, the good news here is, again, we're first in the division, and this league doesn't have relegation. I can tell you right now, as a fan of a middling soccer team who's now flirting with relegation, that's a great thing, and you should just appreciate it. Let's get into the games here because we had 3 games this week. Even though we did a podcast on Sunday, the Sharks hadn't played the Flames at that point. So first game, Sharks and Flames. And the Sharks win this one 3-1. Goals from Evander Kane in the first period, which was, good. Donskoy in the second period, and Joe Pavelski in the third period. Now, one thing I want to point out, and this is another thing I'm finding entertaining about this new NHL, not just the number of goals scored, which I find fun, regardless of whether or not it's because of, skill and speed, or sometimes you're just watching a team whose defense can't get it together. But man, there's a lot of early goals being scored. It feels like I don't have any numbers to back that up, but this is yet another game where player scores pretty freaking early in the period. I don't know. It seems like a weird trend because I remember back in the day, back in the clutch and grab era, where you'd have to wait 3 whole periods for a goal. Now you're getting a goal in the first second, and it comes to Toronto, and we'll talk about it more when we get to Toronto. It was like, what was let me call that back up because I was like confused. It was 3-2 in the first period. It was like 2 to period to go, and like that 2-2 used to be like you'd be lucky if you got 4 goals in a game. Now you got them all in the first period. But anyway, any major thoughts about this game, Ben? At this point, the Sharks and Flames, they're kind of the ones battling. They've been going back and forth for that first and second spot quite a bit so far this season.
Yeah.
I
don't have a ton of, I mean, I think this was a good performance to see because Jones was strong in this game. I felt, not that the defense had necessarily gotten away from giving up high danger shots, because if you look at the heat map in this game, Calgary had tons of opportunities from dangerous places. The Sharks, won the high danger chance war, which is good, and they won the goal war, which is also good. But what I saw, what was interesting about this game is the media right after this game was like, this was the prototype, Sharks victory. They fixed everything after that 4-0 loss to the Blues, right? I don't know if you saw that.
You're not buying that? You're not
No,
buying
not
that?
at all. No. This looked exactly like, from an underlying perspective, this looked exactly like many of the games the Sharks have played this year. It looked a lot like, the sort of game that the Sharks played last year quite a bit, where they get up to 2-1, and then, in the third period, they basically let Calgary come in waves. And in some sense, when you do that, you're lucky if you get away with, not losing the game at the end, or not giving up the tying goal.
Right.
So it was funny to me to see how desperate the media around this team seemed to be to get that narrative going.
Yeah.
That narrative of everything's fixed, everything's fine, they get it, it's gonna be fine. And when I watched the game a little late after that response, so I was really watching to see, okay, well, did they actually? No, they didn't. This is no different. The Sharks played exactly the same as they have almost every game this year, and the bounces went their way. That's my summary of this game.
No disagreements from me, Ben.
Yeah.
It was pretty much exactly how I felt that game went as well. Sharks would go on to play what was probably one of the most fun and/or terrifying games, maybe even in their history, definitely this season, against the Nashville Predators. Now, funny thing with the Predators, they seem to do well against the Predators this season, which is good, mainly because, I know that when you look at playoffs a lot, there's sort of two perspectives, right? You either want the easiest path, depending on your fandom, or you really want to see the good ones, stick it to that team. And I kind of feel that way about Nashville right now. I respect Nashville tremendously, but it's going to be a fun series if they meet up. Sharks opened this game, 3 goals in the first period, one from Sorensen, one from Pavelski, one from Suomela. Then the second period, the Predators just come charging right back. Goals from Smith and 2 goals from Forsberg. And in the third period, the Predators score again. So at that point, it is 4-3. Then, with about 6 or 7 minutes left in the third period, Joe Pavelski scores. And literally, I think like 13 seconds later, Jumbo Joe scores his 400th goal, which, look, he was already a lock for the Hall of Fame. I think we've already determined that. But that definitely cemented it. And I'll tell you what, not only was this game insanely entertaining and just so much fun to watch, like this was fun hockey, but Ben, I don't know if you watched the post game at all. When they interviewed, I think it was Jamie Baker was interviewing Jumbo afterwards, he was like, "You have anything to say?" And he pretty much turned around and was like, "Hope you all had a good night tonight," to all the fans, and they all cheered, which is great. A couple things I want to point out about this game. I know I glossed over certain parts of it, but one of the things that really impressed me about this first period, Ben, was the last couple of minutes of that period, the Preds had their tails between their legs. I mean, that was a team that was absolutely just trying to minimize any further damage. And I have not seen the Predators, who have been so strong, play that way or look so intimidated.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, they came back and corrected things, but to even have them like that on the period was amazing. The other thing I want to point out is because we were talking about Jones and letting in goals. Jones in this game did have a lot of big saves. In fact, he had a pretty crucial save in the third. So, this was a game where I feel like, even though, the first couple of goals that came out were a little bit to me from the Predators, but Jones, this wasn't his. When you look at the score, you might automatically assume, based off how we were talking, that he just had a terrible game, and not really the case.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, unlike the Toronto game, I don't think I would point to any of 3 of these goals and be like, God damn it, Jones. Because it wasn't nearly as clear as the problems were in the Toronto game. I'd agree with you. I think that this was the goals in this game on Jones came from pretty in tight. I don't think the Sharks played a particularly bad game, even defensively in this one. It just, sometimes, you go against the best team in the league and they actually are pretty good at shooting. And
yeah,
that felt like the way this game was. I mean, honestly, the Sharks really did end up dominating this game. From an underlying perspective, which I did not really expect, given that the Predators were the best team in the league. And yet, as you say, the Sharks have matched up pretty well against the Predators in the two games they've played so far. So maybe that does bode fine for the Sharks. We certainly have seen Sharks teams in previous years that step up when playing the best in the league, and then step off the gas when they're not.
That's historically been an annoyance, right? Playing to the level of the opponent versus playing their game.
Exactly. But the Sharks just utterly annihilated Nashville in the first period. I mean, this was maybe as strong a performance as the Sharks have had all year in a single period. Right. What was disappointing was the second period. They, especially early, and partly because they gave up some not so great penalties, or at least one not so great penalty. They end up, tied, and then you get sort of a bad bounce a little bit and you're behind. What was great,
right,
obviously, is they were resilient. And you get the 2 goals in the third to pull ahead. And that Jumbo goal was, just came so quickly after the tying goal that you almost didn't have time to sit back down. I don't think they finished playing the goal song, actually.
Yeah.
I think people were still chanting, and all of a sudden Jumbo just sniped that shot in.
Oh, it felt like it was one of those goals that just because of the timing and the authority with it just felt like a statement, which again, for Jumbo and what he's been through this season.
Yeah.
I could not have been more excited that of all the people to score that goal.
Yeah.
It was him.
Oh, I mean, and how excited he was. I mean, and you're right. Like, that guy is playing on no knees and has had to fight back from knee injuries the last 2 years. Now, one other bummer about this game is Tomas Hertl went back out with some kind of lower body injury, and it's bad enough that he missed the game against Toronto, and he's going to miss the game tomorrow. So it wasn't all sweetness and light coming out of this game, though. I ultimately. I think I would take this, even though, man, this was a weird game. And, during the second period, I know the fan base was starting to clench a bit. I would take a game like this, 9 times out of 10, where the Sharks didn't really let off the gas. They just, they got counterpunched a little bit and showed even better in the third. I mean, not as well as they played in the first, but, the Sharks controlled the high danger chances in both the first and third periods. And if a team does that, they're going to win more games than they lose.
Yeah. 100% agree with you on that.
And now Toronto.
Yeah. So this game almost felt like it was going to be as fun. And then it kind of wasn't.
First of all, certainly started off as dumb.
Yes,
as any Sharks game has
Jones
started.
Absolutely had to make that first save. By the way,
not even that. No, I
Well,
mean the game started off
you mean with Goodrow?
stupid. DeBoer did that on purpose, and DeBoer's again, like, my frustration bubbles over.
Yeah.
Nazem Kadri is going to just walk away 1,000% of the time from any stupid, thuggish bullshit you think you're going to pull with him.
Right.
Like, there's not even a question that he's not going to step up for a fight, and you're just going to take a stupid penalty.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
But how do you really feel, Ben?
I mean, I just don't even have words. I just don't have words for something that galactically stupid.
Yeah.
And not just a player, a meathead player going out and doing something dumb, thinking he's going to, prove his place. And, as you sometimes see players want to do, right? They want to get on the good side of the coaching staff and show that they'll stick up for their teammates and blah, 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 fucking blah. But that DeBoer literally made that happen.
Yeah.
Look, Vlasic being on the power play is a firing offense. Thinking you're going to draw, Kadri into a fight for ripping off half of Jumbo's beard last year should be a fireable offense.
No, I totally agree. And the really frustrating thing about that was you're playing a really good team.
Yes.
Like, so
number one on the power play.
Yeah, you want to talk about a team that's going to immediately take advantage of that or has a high likelihood? It's these guys. So why at that point even bother doing that? Like, there's just there was no logic to it. Well, for those of you who are wondering what ended up happening out of that, so John Tavares scores pretty much immediately after that power play ends. Then LeBanc scores, so it's a 1-1
on just a hilarious bounce off the boards. Like the boards became self-aware just as a fuck you to Nazem Kadri and his douchiness.
Oh, absolutely. And the toughest part, so when we talk about like not really being the goalie's fault here, I mean, like,
right,
Anderson's not even looking in the direction of where the puck is. He has no awareness of where that puck is, and LeBanc is sitting right there. So there you go. Either way, it doesn't matter how a goal is scored in this NHL. It's a tie game at that point. Then Toronto scores. Then Pavelski scores, and at this point, now we're like just barely over halfway through this period. It's already 2-2, and then Vlasic scores. So it's 3-2 after the first. Now, you might have thought, wow, I wonder if one of these teams is going to get to 10 goals. Well, no, because a lot less scoring after that. Team settled down just a little bit. The second period, Toronto scores 2, and then they score again in the third. And again, that makes the score 5-3. One of the things that was super noticeable to me was not just that first faceoff, Ben, but most of the faceoff. Sharks were not particularly fantastic in the faceoff department.
Right.
And that kind of gave Toronto a good amount of possession. What were your thoughts on this game?
Well, I mean, to address the face-off thing, I mean, face-offs are a puck battle, right?
Yep.
You're going to have dozens and dozens of puck battles in a game, and if you lose the face-offs, they're more visible than some of those other puck battles, but they don't necessarily tilt a game, So I don't get too worked up about face-off totals. Generally speaking.
A face-off though can be clutch for keeping the puck in or out
absolutely.
of the zone, right? So
absolutely,
if the ice is tilted in a certain way on face-offs, that right there is a problem that needs to get, if it becomes a consistent problem across games, needs to get figured out.
It can be. I mean, it also could just be, you can win a face-off and turn over the puck 5 seconds later, and it just doesn't matter, right? I mean,
right.
Face-offs, I again, like as an individual stat, I just don't care that much about them. Is all I'm saying. Like, if it's a trend and you're losing face-offs all year and you're losing games, then maybe you look at what you can do to improve that. But
yeah.
I want to step back for just a second. I really want to read the dumbest quote I've ever read. Again, and this is back to the whole Kadri thing. So when DeBoer admitted that he sent Goodrow after Kadri, he said, "This league's always been about guys holding each other accountable for guys when they cross the line. There's no doubt there was a line crossed last year." Up to that point, I'm kind of nodding my head. Yeah, Kadri's a douche. I would take Kadri on the Sharks immediately, by the way, if that were ever to happen. But DeBoer says this: "It got addressed, and that was the end of it."
No, it didn't.
Really? It got addressed, huh? Really? Yeah, it got addressed because Toronto scored a goal right after. It got addressed up in your ass, DeBoer. is where it got anyway. Overall, my thoughts on this game is actually, the Sharks kind of got unlucky in this game because they actually controlled high danger chances again. They actually did tend to keep the Maple Leafs away from the high danger areas in a way they had not done in a lot of games. But this was that unhappy mixture of defensive miscues sending Maple Leafs in on one-on-one, and Jones just being incapable of playing a one-on-one very well. The other thing I do want to say is, and you'll see some folks, talking about this if you're part of our community on Twitter, is that there is something off about how the Sharks have been playing two-on-ones. And I've noticed this too, that the defenseman back on the 2-on-1 is not playing the pass as strongly as he probably should. In fact, they seem to be being coached to challenge the shooter, which is like the very worst way to try to defend a 2-on-1, right?
Right.
Because it means the goalie has to get across to play the pass, as opposed to squaring up on the shooter and allowing his defenseman to break up a pass that goes across the ice, right? And I can't say that that's not causing, a big part of the problems, that Jones has had this year. If I was a goalie, I wouldn't want to see my defensemen play things that way, and I certainly wouldn't want to see the coaches tell them to play it that way. And of course, we don't know that the coaches are saying that, but I've seen it multiple times, and other folks in our community seem to think it is a legit issue. And I just shrug and it sounds legit. But the problem here wasn't 2-on-1s, right? The problem here was 1-on-1s. The problem was skaters getting it on Jones and getting a Joner, and then burying it glove high or stick side, and here we are, and the Sharks lose 5-3, a game that honestly they should have won from most metrics.
Yeah.
So Toronto's really good. They're not the Nashville Predators, but they are really good. And I as much as I would love to see the Sharks play the Predators in a playoff series, I'd love to see the Sharks play the Maple Leafs in let's say, I don't know, the Stanley Cup final, because I think it would be an entertaining series.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see Jumbo lift the cup and Marleau not.
Do you?
That's right. I said that.
You're cold-blooded. Do you think? It's really interesting when you look at the East, right? Because Boston's also playing extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that'll be a fun matchup over there if it ends up coming to it, I think.
And we'll see tomorrow what that matchup looks like, right?
Yeah. Now you're probably
not tomorrow. When are the Bruins coming in? I thought they were coming in soon, but maybe
they are coming in.
I guess I'm crazy.
I'll tell you right now.
While.
Not this month. Yeah, you're nuts. Now some of you savvy Sharks fans might be like, how come we're not talking about the Nylander situation? Because he's, I guess, technically on Toronto, depending on who you're gonna ask. And there's one good reason, because we're not getting him.
Yeah.
Like, so it's moot, and you can wish for it if you really want it. You can try to use as much logic as you can dream up. That's not happening. So we've kind of chosen to go over it. That being said, Ben, your 3 stars of the week.
What was that transition? That is the worst.
There's gonna be someone out there going, "Oh, I actually thought you guys were gonna talk about it now." No, we're really not gonna talk about it.
No, because we don't care. Because Nylander's either gonna sign or he's not. And honestly, the Leafs don't need him that badly. And
the Sharks aren't gonna get him.
And the Sharks are not gonna get him. There's no trade package where Nylander shows up and gets max contract here. DW's not going to give him that. So
and DW also, likes guys of characters, we know, and not showing it right there. So let's not talk about it anymore, Ben. 3 stars.
All right, fine. Oh Lord, man, this week I think I will give Pavelski 3rd star because he's been pretty outstanding. And actually, I want to take a moment to just say that Pavelski, particularly given that Jumbo spent some time on IR and Pavelski's had to sort of lead from the forward side of things, lead the power play and lead a line as a center, which is not something he has to do when Jumbo's playing. Pavs has been great. He's producing goals, not really producing assists, but that's fine. He's not asked to.
Hey Ben, can I point something out?
Sure.
Contract year.
Well, look, it's not like Pavs has been a slouch any other year.
No, but I'm not joking. He's well aware. We're all well aware.
I mean, it's too bad because
I'll take advantage of it. I don't care.
well, yeah, unfortunately, then he's going to get a really gross contract, and then we're going to be sad.
I think he's going for a really gross contract either way.
Yeah, I would love to give Tomas Hertl a star, but he's been hurt too much, and he's been great when he's played, but I sure hope whatever he's suffering from right now, he bounces back from quick. But anyway, I wanted to recognize Pavs because he's been excellent.
Yeah.
I think I'd love to give Couture a second star just because he's been solid this year too, and solid this week. And it looked for a bit like we weren't going to have Couture for a game or two, and then he bounced back, and was fine. And I'm torn on first star, just because I'd like to give it to Erik Karlsson. Not that he's piling up points, but that guy is electric on the ice, and I just love the way he plays in the defensive zone. And I hope that he starts to catch some luck. One thing I will note, and I think you've said this too in our chats, is when Karlsson and Burns are both on the ice, Karlsson is not going to take the shot.
Right.
And that's fine. He doesn't need to take the shot
in that. He doesn't need to take the shot in that situation.
No, he doesn't. And the good thing about them being on the ice at the same time, at least recently, is it does mean Burns is more often over in that OV spot where he should be. And in fact, the Sharks scored a goal. I think it was against Toronto. That power play goal was a pass to Burns at the OV spot, and then Burns, rather than shooting, shot past to Pavs.
Yeah,
and it was a beauty.
Yeah.
And that's the upside to Burns actually playing where he should there on that power play, like sort of a fourth forward.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm going to just give Karlsson that first star because I love him, and I hope he sticks around.
Wow, I thought we were going to have the same 3 stars because whenever Colin's not here, that's always the problem.
It's a weird week, right? Because a lot of guys got points.
Yeah.
And you could pick any number of guys for it.
Yeah, and what's really funny is I was struggling with my second and third star, mainly because I feel like you could flip them either way for this week, and it would be fine. I'm going to end up giving my third star to Joe Pavelski for pretty much all the reasons that you stated. So I'm not going to go back into it again because you put it so eloquently, Ben. My second star, I'm going to give to Sorensen. Sorensen had
that's a good call.
Quite a few assists. He's been been electric too. He's great.
Thrived. He has thrived playing with Jumbo on that sort of like third line. And I'm just going to say something that I said in our chat this week, is that what I've seen from Sorensen is he's starting to play a very physical game, so that it's actually hard to tell the difference between him and Meier, except he's about 6 inches shorter than Meier.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, you look at that Nashville game alone, okay? He opens the scoring, and then he's got assists on both the Pavelski and the Thornton goals at the end of the game. So not only did he start the Sharks off right, but he played a part in the Sharks tying and winning the game. And it's like he's starting to play like he was playing in the playoffs, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's clear. I mean, there's chemistry there. Right, it's clear that there's chemistry him playing with Jumbo, and they need to keep that.
Oh, yeah, and Jumbo called it out as well. He called it out. He called out the week prior.
Yeah,
he brought up the fact that he was feeling chemistry, and this kind of feeds into what we were talking about. Colin and I were talking about 2 weeks ago, which is this. There isn't a need for Jumbo on the top lines.
Agree.
And if you pair him, if you look at him again, not as the franchise player anymore, not as your superstar anymore, but you look at him as an extremely valuable tool or specialist, like he'll elevate the game of other guys.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of player Joe is. So good on Sorensen. And of course, speaking of Joe, he's getting my first star because number 400 and the game winning goal and the way he did it and the statement he was seemingly making with it, and for his post-game interview, because damn, it was impressive. And because he does his post-game locker room interview without a shirt on because he hates shirts. And it's a joke now. Also, even Brody was calling it out. He hates shirts.
Yeah, and also, he had an opportunity to score number 400 on a breakaway where he looked kind of like the Titanic trying to turn. It just
when
I was
I
just
saw
gonna say,
that, when I saw that though, for me, that it was less about his skating. I mean, I think he was in position to get that breakaway because he wasn't skating
right.
to start off. But that was just one of those things where you watched it and it was heartbreaking because you knew how much that goal would have meant to him and to the Sharks at that point in time. And he just chose the wrong spot.
Yeah. Well, and also, something I think I'm willing to admit is his skating has been a lot better in the last couple games.
No, he's
almost
a workhorse,
like he's starting
man.
What's that?
He's a workhorse.
Yeah, it's amazing what he's come back from, and we're gonna miss that guy when he is not in the league anymore.
Oh, I totally agree. Well, Ben, like I said before, the Sharks are in first in the division. Now it's pretty close because when you look at it, they've got 23 points and they've played 20 games. Right behind them is Vancouver, 21 games played and 22 points. Then right behind them is Calgary with 19 games and 21 points. And you got Anaheim and Edmonton who are sitting there at 20 and 19 in Arizona.
Yep.
With 19 as well. So really, any day you check these standings, they can bounce around. But so far, the Sharks have been doing a pretty good job of holding on to that top spot. They've got quite a few games this week. Again, we're podcasting on a Friday again. So that means that our week starts on a Saturday where they take on St. Louis, who I know, Ben, you don't care about St. Louis, but I still hate those guys. And then they take on Connor McDavid and Tom McClellan. If Tom McClellan's still around by that point on the 20th, that's Tuesday, also at home. And then they take on Vancouver at home. And that is the first of what will be a back-to-back. The next game being that Saturday against the Vegas Golden Knights in Vegas.
Ooh, boy, has that team been unlucky this year.
Yeah.
it's all coming due.
Hi, Vegas fans. How you feeling now? You can, that concludes our podcast. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. You can subscribe to us on Android platforms, Android people. You know what I'm going to say? Just someone write us and tell us how you do it. And I'll say it properly. You can find us on the web at circlingthecup.com. You can tweet at us at circlingthecup. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/circlingthecup. And I want to say one thing before we say the bye-byes, Ben.
Uh-oh.
This is a very special podcast because when we started this podcast, there were two of us who were still living in the Bay Area. And after this podcast, there will only be one.
Yep.
That's why I want to talk about how special I am, Ben. The special guy. So, no, Ben is indeed moving on. So he's going to be catching games with his NHL network subscription and or on NHL streams on Reddit. Ben, how does it feel to now be almost like an expat Sharks fan?
I mean, it's a bummer because I've really enjoyed being able to just I have friends who have season tickets, and it's like once a month or so, somebody would be like, "Hey, you want a couple tickets?" And I could just, hop in the car and drive over to the tank, and that's just going to be off the docket now. But it's for me, a lot of it's going to be the same, right? Because I watch 95% of the games from the couch. And so now it's just going to be 100%.
You're actually really lucky because when I was living in Boston, streaming didn't really exist at that point.
Exactly.
So that wasn't. But I'll tell you what. That's when I fell in love with Dan Rusanowski and the radio broadcast, because even the radio team is phenomenal. So I'll tell you this. I know you've got some slight fear about how that's going to work out with the NHL network. It'll be fine. You'll be totally fine.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But even if you can't, man, grab the app, listen to the radio, because Dan paints a really solid. I know, but honestly, he paints a real solid picture. And let's be real. You've probably got some advanced stats website open up the entire time anyway. You're probably
I typically do. I just radio doesn't work for me for sports except for baseball, because nothing ever happens in baseball.
Well, Ben, when you don't have a choice, it works great.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm very happy that NHL.tv exists and I can subscribe to it and keep watching the Sharks games so I can keep doing this podcast.
Yeah, Ben has committed to not becoming a fan of a potential future franchise. So
that's Seattle anyway. It's too far.
That is a big win for us Sharks fans.
Anyways, wait a minute. It's 5 hours to Seattle. It's 9 hours to San Jose.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I just nodded because I don't want you to be a metropolitan.
No, I will SJ Sharks fan forever. Don't worry about it.
That concludes our podcast. Colin, I hope you enjoyed listening from your bed, because I know about halfway through you turn this on and we're like, oh no. But Ben, say bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you, San Jose.
Oh. Yeah, I'll leave that in.
I will. I'll end the podcast with it.
All right, man. Well, good luck with your move. I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
I love the Pacific Northwest, and if it wasn't for the fact that we're very much tied here between my job and Jamie's job, all of our families, and the fact that my wife needs to live in like the hottest of hot deserts and cannot handle the cold rain, I would be up there in a heartbeat, man. I love it up there.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I've always known I would go that way when I didn't have to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And once Caitlin established residency at age 18 in college, we basically moved as fast as you can to get the hell out of here. It's just so expensive here.
Oh yeah, it's getting nuts, and most of the charm is fading very quickly. But
Yeah,
I will point one thing out to you.
Yeah.
I want you to take inventory, Ben, when you move in.